Boom, back to recording. All right.
Yeah, Lindsay, click it, spin it.
So let's see. We had just talked about No Name, the pixie. And we had just finished up talking about him. So that's another aspect of the world, and another coming is the pixies.
So you want more?
Sure.
Okay.
Unless you don't want to talk about it anymore, then we'll just sleep.
You can't battle, Lindsay.
Apparently I can't sleep.
You're driving.
Oh. Yeah.
So-
You probably shouldn't sleep while you're driving.
Should we go north, east, west, south?
Let's go south.
Because the Pixies are kind of in a central location.
Yeah, well, now we're going south.
So if we go south, you've got the Nomads
Oh, yeah, that's contagious.
live down there, which are essentially a group of farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of...
Nomadic farmers.
There you go.
You'd have to explain that one. Because the whole thing that ended nomadacy was farms.
Yes. But if you wanted to farm all year long, you had to travel.
But you can't farm and travel at the same time.
Sure.
What is their crop? A two-day crop?
No, they have multiple crops. And so essentially they're the guys that travel along the south, and winter basically follows them, and they stay ahead of the winter harvesting their crops. And they harvest, they don't necessarily tend the fields and tend things like that.
So they're basically gatherers.
So they
Not so much farmers.
They till the land and build the land for growing specific things,
Mm-hmm.
and then let it grow there in the wild.
Yeah, there was
And then
a lot of the Iroquois would burn down an area and then plant a bunch of tubers and then leave.
yep. And so that's kind of what these guys do.
Listen to Daddy.
Is they build self-sustaining farming communities and then leave so that they know when they come back where to go to get it,
Mm-hmm.
and where they can then pack it up, ship it north to sell.
Okay.
And they've done this so well that they actually provide all the food for everything. I mean, you still have the people that are out and about, and you still have the people that farm for themselves, or the individuals that try to, have their little farms and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, when you get something from a store in bulk, or you get something from a store that they're reselling, it came from the south. It came from this group down there that essentially create this big circle to stay ahead of the winter while harvesting their crops.
So winter
that they-
travels around in a circle?
down there. It's kind of interesting. I mean, up above,
Wobble.
essentially, but up above it kind of stays warmer than down. At least
Usually the equator does so.
and so down below is where it's cold, and up above where it's warm. And so yeah, it is kind of a cyclic little thing. And
Okay.
so they travel the world
Mm-hmm.
on that circle, and they provide all the food. I don't know if you necessarily would call it winter, but winter was the best explanation for it, because it's the changing of the seasons
Mhm.
that causes it to be able to be harvested there. And
see, a lot because a lot of the thing that why most farming communities, like especially, actually work farther away from the equator than they do closer to the equator, and why closer to the equator you actually lose a lot of your farming communities and gain more hunter-gatherers and stuff like that, is because having that ability of winter to sit down and relax after collecting all that food is the huge. So these people don't seem to have that winter time of relax and fix, and
No, they don't stop. They just keep going. They don't ever really seem to have they don't have a pause.
Seems oddly sustainable.
Well, that's why it's not the same area that they keep farming.
Oh no, that's not the.
previous area
I'm not saying the
gets
land is
depressed.
sustainable. I mean the culture,
But
because yeah, like I said, the reason why most farming communities can last is because of the pause in the farm when you get winter and fall. That seasonal base of time.
right, their break or their whatever.
Yeah, the breaking of the season, where you have the planting, the growing, the harvest, and then the rest. And then you go back to it again. These guys just have planting, harvest,
Yeah.
planting, harvest, planting, harvest.
They repair and then harvest and then move on. And then repair and then harvest and move on. Or harvest and repair, I guess it would be. Because they harvest what they have that is there. They repair if they need to for anything else. And then they get ready to move on.
Do they then plant again? Or?
No, they build them self-sustaining. So they're not harvesting everything per se. But they're harvesting enough to just keep being able to keep their trade and everything up. And so it's kind of it'd be like planting your winter hay crop. Or because like a couple of places have some huge wild now elephant garlic places, because the elephant garlic was brought in, and in order that they built these fields is they would take the elephant garlic when it grew. When they harvested it, they'd break it apart, put some back in the hole, and take the rest. And it kept multiplying there. And so it's things like that they are harvesting and sending up. Is things that essentially they're just like apple trees or like things like that have been planted, take the winter and come back and grow again. And you're right, if they had stayed or if they built a different way of living, or the farms would probably get bigger and grow bigger, in fact, or may even be more sustainable, but they kind of just travel. And they don't go out of their way to interact with other people. So they have more of this closed culture where other people have come in and traded with them to get stuff and bring it all out. And that's why there's such a huge trade route to them, because of that. And because you can always tell where they're going to be because where the seasons are. You know where to find them to get your food and trade for it, or trade for your larger food to then take up and sell. But that's where so I guess you'd explain it kind of, let's see. So you've got your planet, your ball, and as it rotates, it's slightly tilted towards its sun, kind of like ours, but the north is mostly always pointed towards the sun. And the south partially is. So depending on the rotation around, depends on where you get the most sun in the north. And that's why the seasons kind of rotate as they do.
Okay.
If that kind of makes sense.
Kind of. Probably might make more sense if they saw your hand gestures. I don't know.
Oh.
They don't get to see them. The hand gestures for them. They just
But
get pretty views of the countryside.
That's about how it's kind of built. It's kind of like the polar cap rotates slowly like a glacier would around the southern border. But it's not a glacier because it does melt and grow back and melt and go back. So it's I don't know what you'd call that, but essentially it rotates and hardens and rotates and hardens on the other sides, and that's what causes.
You mean like regular natural glaciers?
Yeah, but it's not the because some glaciers, I guess it's some and some don't, but the glaciers that that shifted and slid.
Well, those are ones that broke off and slid. But
right, but these are just kind of the melting.
If you look at the caps just kind of, because of the wobble of the earth, they just kind of melt and grow,
and that's
as
exactly
they wobble
what these
around.
are doing.
Yeah. It's just that apparently there's an entire landmass all the way around instead of ocean, because that's what stops us, is that you keep running into ocean. Otherwise, you could go all the way around, but you then run into the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean.
Right. No, there are actual islands that traverse the entirety. There's still water areas, but for these guys, like I said, have built such a way that they can walk all the way around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it might be like if the cap on the Antarctica had shifted just barely off the land and was rotating so that some of the land was always showing.
Well, then they would have had to shrink, not rotate off. But well,
you kind of get what I'm saying.
Kind of, yeah. You gotta have an extreme wobble in the planet, but it would work.
Right. Wow.
Although the extreme wobble would, the atmosphere of that planet would.
It's havoc.
I was about to say a few thousand years and that planet's going to be gone.
No, because of the machines.
Yeah, a few thousand years and that planet's going to be gone.
The machines have kickstarted.
Okay, so now it's going to be hundreds of thousands.
It's yeah. But anyway, that's
That's down.
Yeah, no, it does wobble, it does shift, and that's kind of the history. You get quite a few eras, and it does change where you do get a lot of cold or a lot of warmth or with it because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But during the time of this, where we're kind of writing in the quote unquote, I guess you'd call it present or whatever, that's where everything is set and seems to have been set for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone accounts it for the pixies that have kept the earth going where they built.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they even control the weather where they are too. But
is it known that they control the weather, or?
Yes. Just not openly spoken, really. And it's around them that they do that.
Okay.
Because, they are... Why would you speak about the Terminator?
Because you don't want it to come kill you, so you talk about it so that you know how to...
But not in front of it.
Well, the pixies aren't there.
But that's or the boogeyman, or essentially they have become kind of that hushed. We know about them, and we know that if we need something fixed that is broken beyond our normal means of repair, then we've got to. But they're kind of the hushed boogeyman that we only deal with some of the time.
Now, is there a reason for that boogeyman-like mentality?
I would just call it a stigma. So it's not necessarily, they're very, very different.
So it's more like a gypsy than
they
like boogeyman.
Raised very different culturally wise, and so everyone is just kind of now become avoidant. I guess the new term you'd use for it is everyone is racist against them.
Everything's racist. Racist pixies.
And so
I guess we're racist against pixies.
Just because, and as you find out from Nameless, that they aren't necessarily what everyone has stigmatized them as being.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, that's it's hard to break off a stigma when
you have
you're the Amish.
100 years of developing it.
Yeah, like I said, you're the Amish, and you've built that up, but you don't do the
well, even never mind the Amish. You know, it's kind of hard to break off a stigma when you have a stigma.
Yep.
Any culture.
And so, yeah, that's them. And then the nomads nomads will still break away and still leave, and other people will come down and join them. And but like you said, it's a hard lifestyle, and they've just surrendered to that's our lifestyle.
This is what we do.
Yep. And if you can't handle it, if you don't like it, if you don't, well, okay. There are other places. The job's not for everyone. See you later. Right? Come back, visit, whatever. But it's not as strict, or not like the library. And then you do have the water people, which ride on the waves and build the big ships.
Dolphin riders.
And they build their cities on the water.
So massive floating water world cities.
Because how the world is wobbled is you have massive land covering most of it, and then you have huge water stuck on one side. But so these guys have, they are very much so the out there fishing and doing and surviving just out in the water. And they also are the builders of airplane-like things, or sky ships, or things like that, as I guess you'd call them.
So they sail the sky as well as the seas?
Yes. They're a mix of the two. But it's essentially the same group of people. Or at least for all purposes.
So are these same sky pirates, are these the Thief Guild people?
No, those just live on the islands out there. They do sail off into other places.
I thought you said there was one mass of water.
Right. I did. And and then you've got massive land on one side, massive water kind of on the other. But you do have not very many, but little tiny islands that break off of massive land. So it's not, so it'd be like the Florida Keys.
Okay.
So if you go back far enough, they were attached to the land, but because of the rise or the ebb and flow of the ocean, it has worn them into islands.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the same thing that you would have on the outskirts of this land.
Okay.
So the further out you go, of course, then the less islands or the less land until you hit back to the other side where the land and islands are again.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why you're not going to get large islands. You're not going to get very, very well sustaining islands.
No Hawaii's.
Right, no Hawaii's, no nothing.
No Papua
really
New Guineas.
like that. You're getting no New Zealand, or not New Zealand. Yeah, New Zealand or Australia, things like that.
Well, Australia's a continent.
Well, it's
Yeah, it's a continent.
Right.
It's a small continent. But
island
still
and
a continent. Well, technically, all the continents are islands.
But you don't get large masses like that. It's essentially kind of like Russia and China and Europe and Africa and Middle East, how that is all kind of built like that. And then it would be like that huge landmass, and then there's just water on the other side.
So kind of like a bigger Pangea.
Yeah. Yep. So that's kind of how I've envisioned it.
Okay.
Is building along that way. And then you do have I guess you'd call them the bloodthirsties. I don't really have a name for them yet.
Mm-hmm.
But the guys that always love to come in and raid for what they want instead of trade for what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So they would fit along the lines more of like the Vikings.
Well, Vikings traded more than they raided.
And a mix of, because that's where they did go in and out every once in a while, and they did go take things from people too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
they just traded a lot more than they raided.
I was going to mix that with then pirates. Because they did have a culture, and they did have a land, and they did have a group of people. But at the same time,
So they're kind of like the original stories of Atlantis.
Minus the technology, yes.
Yeah, because Atlantis was mostly a military, aggressive,
Stronghold,
expansionist.
Yep.
Very aggressive military. Like that's why the Minoans don't fit as being Atlantis. That's why a lot of the Mediterranean, besides the fact that technically it was according to, outside the Pillars of Hercules, which, all the islands they keep looking at are very much on the inside of the Pillars of Hercules, but very much on the inside of the Pillars of Hercules. But yeah, they were very, very aggressive militarily, while Minoa was much more culturally trade-based. So obviously Minoa is not Atlantis, but kind of so like Atlantis.
Yeah, that would
where
fit.
It's very much the thing they're known for is coming down on their ships and taking things and leaving.
And yes, 9 times out of 10, you are better off if you do not attack them.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of
Let them take it.
hide what you before they get there.
So it kind of a lot like like Japanese peasants and stuff, or any peasants. When they come a raiding, you leave stuff out so they get something, and then you
Right.
hide what you can to survive, and then they take the greater good and then leave with the more amount. That way, leaving you with something. If
Right.
you hide the something and leave out the larger amount.
And so
Obviously, you're not gaining 50%. You're losing 70 to 80% of your stuff, but 10 to 9% of keeping something is a lot
you'll
better
survive
than being
or
dead.
possibly survive
Mhm.
versus yeah, they're going to take everything and you.
Yeah.
Because they do take slaves, they do take... And they have been known to sell things, but not usually.
They're usually selling someone with a bigger gun than they do.
They're usually selling something to get something fixed or to get something repaired that they can't repair.
Mm-hmm. Or that they can't just steal.
Or, yeah. But that the likelihood of them doing that instead of, like you just said, trading up for a bigger thing and leaving you with a broken thing is not very high. And though unusual...
Or just trading with someone that's got a bigger gun than them, so they're like,
Right.
rather trade with you than get shot by you.
Unusual, but they do not only travel the coastline, doing that all the way around, but every once in a while, they do go deeper.
Like in larger rivers and stuff, or...
Right, well, across the land. They will actually pick their ships up and travel inward a ways.
Oh, they carry the ships on their backs?
No.
Or just bring in their ships and then go raiding on the inside, then come back to their ships.
Mainly, yeah. Bring their ships up onto the logs. And then raid in and then come back out. And there are very, very few that have actually been known that they survived against. So it's Norris. Like, the pixies are ones that they don't go after. Yeah, the nomads unfortunately get usually the brunt. The librarians, they don't go after.
Well, there's not much that they can use from the librarians.
No. Plus, the library is essentially a hole in the mountain that has been extremely fortified. So, breaking through the mountain at something that can lob you out before you break through the mountain is not necessarily a wise thing.
Yeah, not a profitable venture. Especially for books.
Yeah, that's true. Now they might, and even if you are losing 90% of your guys to pick up a few slaves that carry that information, again, that's not
worth it.
Not worth it.
No, not worth the venture.
And so that's why those two groups aren't necessarily fought after or attacked very often. Yeah, the stories of them being attacked are very short and sweet. They came, they disappeared, and this group still survived. So that's the main groups of body. Guess who's still there?
The buffalo.
So that's the main groups. And then of course you do still have littler groups of people, and you do still have non-conformists that do other things, I guess you could say. And
well, you never really talk about the traders. Like, cause so far we've got the raiders, the sailors, the farmers, and the archivists,
and the pixies,
and the big, like, obviously. So what's the people on the mainland?
well,
because the people that farm, they follow the
south.
The south.
And then you've got your... That's true. That's basically your little cities.
So we haven't gone very... We have,
And then you do have the group of traders, though.
Yeah. And are there any large... Are they just tons and tons of tiny city-states, or...?
Kind of. I mean, well, I guess you'd call them large city-states. Which is why they have to use, or they have chosen, I should say, to majorly use the library as their treaties on their big Geneva Convention building there is because there are a lot of feudal lords out there, and so it is quite a bit. We're going to expand our territory through your territory. Well, I'm going to get my friends and allies together that have said that they would join me in battle, and we're not going to take that, and we're going to split your land afterwards. And so there is a lot of that, but you don't really hear a lot about that. You run into a little bit of it when Rags first leaves, but as far as the structure of it or I haven't really thought about necessarily writing it up or bringing it in or anything like that, because you're following a librarian that's trying to find out if dragons really existed in the past. What happened to them? Where did they go? Why do no one see them anymore? When he finds a journal about a dragon rider, his journal talks about the great battles that they would have in the air and on land, and it would be between the dragon riders and other groups of dragon riders, and they were the ones that essentially had the power and controlled everything. And the larger and better the dragon riders were of your area, the larger and better than your city-state would be.
They're basically your jet engine.
Right, they're your jet engines, they're your cannons, your protection, your soldiers that go out and fight, were these dragon riders. I mean, you still had, of course, your littler, and you still had your foot soldiers, and you still had other things, but we're following he finds that book that I'm starting to pen out of the dragon rider, and he talks about the exploits, and he talks about how he found his dragon, and he talks about how there is an actual physical, spiritual, mental, you two bond on a molecular level. So essentially, if you find a dragon and a dragon chooses you to be its rider, you now have taken upon yourself more of the dragon-like attributes.
Okay.
And so not everyone gets the same things from it, but you now have more abilities. You now are stronger in some things. You are now better in some things because you have bonded with it. And then at the same point, if the dragon gives that to you freely, and so it is lessened a little, but together you're stronger. And so that's kind of you guys are bonded in such a way that on top of it, if one gets injured, the other is injured. So that's why I said it's a bond. It's beyond just the normal bond.
Yeah, it's not just like a bond of friendship or a bond of. It is a molecular, cellular level.
Right. You two
like
you are.
I'm trying to.
Not even a parasitic.
No. I'm trying to remind a term that once I say it, you'll probably kind of like quantum entanglement.
Yes. Yep.
Where it's the same thing in two different areas.
Right. Either the same atom split, and in the second, it'll feel the pain of the other, and vice versa. Or like supposedly some twins will be able to tell and feel what the other twin is doing. It's that, except for it's
all in one.
Grander. Yeah, all in one. And so he reads this, and it's a journal written. It's a day by day exploits,
or it's a dang good fantasy novel.
Exactly. No, that's. But he's got exactly.
Because I've read some dang good fantasy novels where it's written in first person.
But that's why. That's why he becomes intrigued.
In fact, I plan on writing one.
That's why he becomes very much so.
And starts him on his researching spree.
He's like, well, wait a minute. This map shows my mountain. This map shows...
This map is an actual map. Here I am.
And I can pull it up and show the maps of now. And I can put all the features on.
There's a lot of these features matched.
Right, and so like you said, it's either
because I'm sure some features would change over time.
Dang good,
especially with a wobble.
Yeah, it's essentially a dang good.
It's either a dang good fantasy novel, or there's a little bit of kernel in here.
Or exactly. And so he wanted to find out
how much of that kernel is real.
What peyote this guy was smoking.
And can I have some?
And so he then, digging through...
We've been following this guy for about 45 minutes.
The library, and he starts finding hints of that in other history books.
Yeah, little crumbs here and there.
And he starts finding... he finds another story about dragons. And he finds another story about the riders. And he finds another story about... And so it becomes more of a, well, are these all stories?
Does Bigfoot not... Is Bigfoot a shared collective imagination? Or is there something to the fact that hundreds of cultures talk about a Bigfoot-like thing?
Exactly. And so his Bigfoot becomes the dragon. And he's got to hunt it out. He's got to find it. His obsession becomes, are these just make-believe fantasy books? And is this just an ongoing mythos that has been...
Is this just a cultural mythos that seems to spring up?
Right.
Like a great flood, or is there something to this?
And so he takes the journal and the map, so again another taboo, out of the library.
So he steals the archive. Well, the fact that he's leaving the archive is already taboo. This has never happened before.
Yeah.
And so he not
or
only...
at least never documented.
Yeah, so not only does he technically steal from the library by simply leaving.
Yeah.
Because he is technically archive liberal property.
Right.
He also takes more property with him.
Exactly.
Now we definitely got to kill him, Ben.
So that's why I said he's hunted.
Yeah, we got to kill him. This isn't allowed.
He is...
Oh, I'm doing weird flavored burps now.
And so...
Well, here we're at the end of the 20-minute mark again.
Okay.